And welcome to this edition of AFA Today. Fred Jackson sitting in for Kevin McCullough today. No, Kevin is not scrambling to finish up his tax return. He's actually going to be a guest today on one of the Fox News programs this afternoon, I'm told. So Kevin is busy with another task today, and it's my pleasure to sit in for Kevin on this, Tuesday, April 15th, tax day. Now, most reports say that the vast majority of Americans have already filed. They do it early these days, especially electronically. Now they do this kind of thing. But the pain of taxes, that seems to continue well after you file those taxes. In fact, there's a new Gallup poll today that finds the majority of Americans, 52%, you're not going to be surprised by this, they say they pay too much federal income tax. The poll went on to say 42% say the amount they pay is about right, and then there was 3% said their federal taxes are too low. I want to know who those 3% are who say their federal taxes are too low. If you're saying the federal tax is too low, you should give your address out so that we can send some of your bill to you if you figure it is too low. But 52%, according to this latest Gallup poll today, say they're paying too much in the way of taxes. Now, that in itself, let's face it, folks, is not a new concern. That complaint has been out there for a long time. So here's my question for you today. If you could today sit down, group of people sit down and rewrite our tax code. By the way, if you're interested in getting some details on the tax code, Brian Fisher has had a very interesting column on this. I forget, was it 4,000 pages long now, the tax code, something like that? Just something ridiculous, absolutely ridiculous. But if you had the opportunity today to help rewrite the tax code for this country, first of all, where would you cut? If you had to look at where we're spending our tax dollars right now, where would you cut? Our tax dollars go for things like security, our military, for things like roads that we all enjoy. Here's one. How about health care? Oh, your tax dollars? Yeah. I read a report in the last 12 hours or so about, I think it's, $1 trillion that the subsidies for Obamacare are going to cost people one way or the other. And then there are things like that you might not think about, like school lunch programs. What is it, $9 billion a year for school lunch programs? And you say, now, Fred, come on, what do you got against feeding the kids? Well, I guess I go back a generation or so, folks. I went to school, started kindergarten, around 1959, 1960, somewhere in there. Yes, you kind of figure out my age. But you know what? Mom and Dad packed the lunch for me. That was our school lunch program. And if someone came to school and they wanted a little bit more, you shared with them. What a novel idea. What a principle to be teaching our kids to share. But now $9 billion. And added to that, the disturbing report still on school lunches is that thanks to Michelle Obama and some others dictating now what kind of foods that kids are going to eat, a lot of kids are just throwing those school lunches away. It is just insane what is going on, but that's where your tax dollars. So would you dump the school lunch program? Would you do that? And how about food stamps? I just read an incredible statistic here this morning, folks. The Department of Agriculture's website lists the annual average number of food stamp participants going back to 1969. That year, there were only 2,878,000 people on food stamps, 1969. You know how many people are on food stamps today, folks? 46,609,000 on food stamps. Very interesting story on conservative news, cnsnews.com right now. They provide us with a very interesting graph. Since 2007, the escalation of the number of people on food stamps is absolutely dramatic. The number of people on food stamps, 46,609,000 people on food stamps. In fact, somebody has done a bit of a comparison According to the Department of Agriculture and Census Bureau, people participating in the food stamp program now outnumber the number of women who work full-time year-round in the United States. 46,609,000 on food stamps. The number of women working full-time, 44,059,000. That is the situation we are in. And obviously, we have not even touched some of the other programs. So, my question to you, what would you do? Where would you cut? How much federal government tax dollars do you want spent out there? Where would you make the cuts? 888-589-8840 is the number to call. 888-589-8840. Where would you do the cutting? We all have to pay taxes. As I said, for our military, security for this country, absolutely. Roads, yeah, they're pretty necessary. And maybe to a certain extent, some health care benefits. But where would you cut? Where would you start? 888-589-8840 is the number to call. By the way, another little interesting factoid coming out on tax day. Some folks that have had a look at President Obama's tax return. And it's very interesting. And he between he and Michelle, his wife, I think they made somewhere in the tune, according to their tax return, it was around $500,000. I think it was last year. Of course, his presidential salary is about $400,000 a year. But his one church donation, was $1,500. That was one of his charitable donations, $1,500 or 0.3% of his income. Now, to be fair, they gave about $59,000 to about 32 different charities. And the biggest gift was just over, I think, $8,000 to a very good organization, Fisher House Foundation. And that organization helps families, military families who have loved ones in hospital, provides housing for those loved ones to stay in while their loved one is in hospital. So a good foundation, but very interesting. One church gift, $1,500, and that went to the St. John's Episcopal Church in Washington, D.C., where the president has attended very few times, and actually since he entered into the White House. All right, so what would you like to cut? What would you like to do? Where would you see the federal government cutting back? What can we do without the federal government being involved with? 888-589-8840 is the number to call. All right, so let's take a call right away. We have some anxious people wanting to chime in on that. Let's go to Mary in Arkansas. Mary, good day. How are you on this tax day?
Hello, Fred. I'm just fine. I already paid my taxes.
God bless you.
But the first thing I would cut is Planned Parenthood.
Absolutely.
And I say that with a mean attitude.
No.
So that is how many $1 million?
At the last I heard, I want to say it's around $300 million. I stand to be corrected, but it is a pile of money that Planned Parenthood gets, your tax dollars, every year.
Do you agree with that? Cut them off?
Oh, yeah, absolutely. Okay. That's a great place to start. Where else would you cut?
Okay. Ooh, I don't know. I hadn't thought about sending so much money to other countries.
Okay, kind of international aid, that kind of thing. Yeah.
Uh-huh. Right. We need to take care of our own stuff.
Yeah, absolutely.
Our own people.
All right. Well, listen, okay. I really like your first suggestion, Mary. Planned Parenthood. Like I say, I think it's about $300 million or so a year.
Yes.
I think we give something like $500 million to public broadcasting every year. I think those would be good places to cut.
Yes.
Yeah.
Okay.
All right, Mary. Well, thank you very much. We appreciate that. Some good suggestions. I really like that first one. Yeah, hundreds of millions of dollars of your taxpayers' dollars going to Planned Parenthood. Now, I'll tell you, folks, that's been going on for a long time. That started long before Barack Obama was elected president. Even under Republicans, Planned Parenthood was getting hundreds of millions of dollars of your money every year to carry out those killings of unborn babies. And that is a national shame. All right, to Louisiana now. And Bob, welcome to the program. Where would you, if you had the opportunity, that's our question, to rewrite the tax code in this country, where would you start cutting?
Well, I'm glad you asked me that question because I would absolutely start cutting with eliminating all of that so-called pork and waste that's been identified every year that's been going on. I very much agree with the Planned Parenthood. Actually, I think I'd ban all corporate welfare and cut all subsidies because subsidies are nothing more than supporting things that should not be supported. Now, every once in a while we might have a real reason for subsidies if we came with a dairy shortage, a wheat shortage in America that might for a temporary period to help America. But I would cut all those subsidies. Now, we're starting to talk truly billions and hundreds of billions of dollars when I said that. I would cut, and that includes all community development subsidies and homeowner subsidies and energy subsidies, especially those so-called green energy subsidies. That when we have the best and cheapest energy sources in America, I would basically replace the Environmental Protection Agency. 85% of it needs to be gone.
Yeah.
Because all it's doing is stopping and costing us money to make our energy and our resources more expensive for us and for us to have business in America. I would not only that cuts out all those EPA regulations. Now we're all for a clean environment, but we've gone way past that. And one of the biggest things that I would do that might shock a lot of people, but I'd totally eliminate the Department of Education in America. Education needs to be controlled at its very local level. And the best and closest point is the family. But it needs to be more family involved, more locally controlled, so we don't have this so-called Common Core that's about to take over and truly indoctrinate our kids. Our kids been indoctrinated since the 60s. But the whole education, and then one of the last things that I would do is I would cut all government salaries in half, because guess what? Since 2008, they've been doubled. Not only have we increased the number of government employees, that we now have almost more government employees than we have private employees in America, but now they command the highest salaries and benefits, much more. The average American makes a little less than $45,000 a year. The average government employee makes $78,000 a year.
I've read those stats, Bob, and I thank you very much for your ideas. Some great ideas there. Bob is talking about, education department. Hey, you're not going to get much argument from people across the country on that. You're listening to AFA Today. We're asking the question on this tax day, April 15th. If you had the opportunity, what would you do to rewrite the tax code? Lots of people talk about let's cut back. They don't like paying those taxes, but where would you cut? We've had some great suggestions. Planned Parenthood, start there. We had that suggestion from Bob, cut salaries, but many more suggestions. Want to hear from you. 888-589-8840. You're listening to Fred on AFA Today. We're back in a few minutes.